Yes, we are live indeed. Okay, perfect. All right, everybody. 1 minute to go. Well, let's start with some music. Opa.
Hi everyone and welcome to Will Seaward's spooky late night ghost stories. We are Jamming Humans, we are not Will Seaward. We have Chris on the guitar. Oh, that's Maris. We have Maris on the piano. We have Chris on the guitar. But we are not here to see. You are not here to look at us playing on instruments. You are indeed here to see Mr. Will Seward. So, everyone around the world, wherever you are, I hope you are fine, and I hope, furthermore, you are welcome for the man who I'm about to present right now, as soon as I find the button. Ladies and gentlemen, and everyone around the world, welcome Mr. Will Seaward!
Boogly, boogly, boogly. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the late night ghost story thing that we're doing. How exciting, how spooky. But everyone, I must warn you, the tales that are to follow are spooky indeed. And when I say spooky, I mean very spooky. If I were you, I wouldn't watch this at all. I'd go and find another video about a nice cat or a friendly newt. Go! Run! Flee! What? No? What? Staying? I can only assume you're staying. I can't see you. So, I'm going to assume you are. In that case, well done. It's probably time we began. But before we do, everybody, it's customary when doing these things to get a little screaming practice in. You see, those are the noises that you will be making as this evening progresses. So, why not get your loved ones and friends, whoever you're quarantining with, accustomed to the sounds? Perhaps you're in a part of the world where the quarantine has started to ease. In that case, stop showing off. Those of you who are still quarantined will need to get those in close proximity used to the sounds. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Jam with Humans Orchestra? That was superb. Very well. I can only assume everyone did as well. If not, poorly done. You did badly. If so, then well done. You did well. All right. We're ready to go, everyone. Oh, the fear of it, though. Just look at this book. It's just called Doom. That's in no way an appropriate name for a book. Oh, and the story within is a fitting story for a book called Doom. Can you tell I didn't work that bit out in advance? Oh, it's a scary story. All right, everyone. It's time we began. Inspiration is clearly failing me, so I'm going to stick to the words that are written down in front of me. My friends, it's time for Ghost Story. The first. Lightning fizzed around the spiky turrets of the mighty ancestral castle of the Duke Count Barons of Geflungenhausen, perched upon Mount Geflungenhausen in the ancient kingdom of Geflungenhausen. In olden times, the Count Duke Barons had been known throughout Geflungenhausen for their beer feast cake parties and elegant slow-motion balls. But no more. The castle was shut, and signs of great secrecy were everywhere. The mighty castle gate had been cleverly disguised as a dusty bookcase. And to open it, you had to find a book called Opening Castle Gates and pull it exactly halfway. Everything was bolted with huge electrodes, and most fiendishly of all, the entire castle had been painted with lead. had to put it on a radiator. The storm night was fearsome indeed, but the lightning was drowned out by the strange, wild, pulsing lights bleeding through every crevice in the stonework and every gap in the jagged, rain-lashed tile. Darkness-colored, moonlight-colored, slime-colored lights in sick orange and bile yellow, and sometimes colors that didn't even exist, like fled and urbange and rublo. What vile monstrosities were taking place inside? Shall we take a look? Are you sure? Once again, I'm trusting you to say yes on this. All right. Yes. In we go, you idiots. In we go. Alas, the castle had been hollowed out. The walls, once adorned with pictures of Lederhosen, which had been the pride of Olga Flungenhausen, and with the stuffed heads of inexpertly poured beers, were now decorated with spooky oil paintings depicting the films at the start of the X-Files series. Ambient music was provided by scary, purple-eyed children talking in unison. On the floor were what looked like flagstones, but were actually spooky waxwork sculptures of flagstones, with the real flagstone put inside. But these were mere fripperies. The bulk of the castle seemed to be taken up with strange, arcane scientific apparatus. Skulls lined the walls in various racist arrangements. Evil potions and smelly acids swooshed around inside scientific glassware, dripping into alembics and cucurbits and telescopic flasks, rotating on the weird spirally eyes. Huge lightning rods poked out of the roof, attached to the keys of dungeons, all of whom's inhabitants were now dead. Tesla coils, you say? Pah! Bollocks to Tesla coils! This lab had actual Nikola Tesla, who the Baron had sadistically coiled. There he was, variously springing around, breaking stuff, and slowly ascending staircases like a slinky. The science, if it could be called such, was the only light source. And when not illuminated by the scary lights emanating from the various devices, everything was plunged into dinge and murk, which was even scarier than the usual sort of murk, because this was murk that meant to stab, as in, I'm a murk, you. The room was also full of scalpels with which one could do exactly that. Everything was on a winch. Everything glowed and pulsed. Everything was manacled to the wall. Even the wall itself. And there, at the center of the laboratory, was the brilliant, evil architect of the whole thing, the Duke Baron Geflungenhausen himself, dressed in a blood-red velvet lab coat and trousers made of conical flasks, which regrettably left very little to the imagination. There he was, was, there he stood, digging frenziedly at graves. Oh, yes, indeed, my inquisitive friends, the laboratory also had its own graveyard. Why go outside and get all muddy digging up graves? Reasoned the Duke Count Baron Geflungenhausen, when you could conveniently move the entire village graveyard inside your laboratory. But why did the Count Duke Baron need bodies? The answer, my friends, is horrible indeed. Oh, horror of horror of horror of horror! To an extremely elaborate contraption involving ghosts in giant jars, black holes, and an ongoing hoodoo ceremony. There it was, his evil masterpiece. There it stood, smaller than a house, bigger than a wheel, more jagged than a quail, less invisible than fog, more cobwebby than victory, less friendly than wool, more viscous than the widest egg in the world. All sewn together in an evil, vile abomination were parts taken from the most frightening ghosts and monsters in all the world. The head of a headless man! The eye of an eye of newt! The other eye of a followy around the room portrait! The tongue of Salazar Slytherin! The scary hand with candles on the end of it from the original Wicker Man! A beard of bees made of the bees from the shit Nicolas Cage remake of the Wicker Man! The body of a golem! The big paddly feet of a golem! The teeth of a vampire, the athletic throwing arms of a poltergeist, the vocal cords of a banshee, the pervy fingers of an invisible man, the skeleton of a skeleton. Googly eyes of a swamp thing. Yes, everyone, it had more than one set of eyes. Not only that, the beast was also dressed in a horrible collage of the world's most popular Halloween costumes. The scanty apron of a sexy nurse. The ruff of a sexy pirate. The fedora of a sexy gangster. The bin liner of a sexy bin. And work clothes, which according to the Google search I did is the most common Halloween costume in America. Terrifying. There it floated, suspended by ancient magics, in a vat full of haunted sea, waiting for the spark of life. The ultimate monster. A few dark incantations, and it would be ready to go. Soon he'd unleash it on the world, and then they'd all know of his brilliance, because they'd be dead. But what was this? Tolling bells, somber voices, footsteps upon the soil. A funeral was about to take place in his laboratory graveyard. But how? He'd closed the gate and sealed it with a fiendish puzzle. Quick, behind a tussock. He concealed himself himself just in time. In came the villagers, wearing their darkest and most funereal alpine hats. There might be something to be gained here after all. There was, you see, one worry in the Duke Count Baron Geflungerhausen's brilliant evil mind. In his excitement, he'd been growing careless. Experiments had been getting loose and wandering. Nothing serious, the odd body here and there. Mostly they disintegrated soon enough, but still. If the world guessed at his foul experiments, then all was lost. They were getting closer. He could hear their pleasant villager voices. "Are you smaller than this man, you little heap?" said a villager. Because they're Cockneys. Because I'm keen to avoid doing racist accents. "I tell you, I seen them walking about. When I see him last, he was brown bread, dead. But when I see him next, he was white bread, alive. No! The Count Duke Baron was distraught. They knew they'd seen. Curses! It was all over. They'd have to be removed. They'd have to be destroyed. But he couldn't kill all of them. He was a feeble aristocrat. For that, he'd need the ultimate monster. Quick as the lightning that rocked his ancient castle, the Duke Count Baron whizzed back to his book of incantations. There it was, ready to go. Perhaps it was indeed time for a test. "Good evening, my friends," he called. "I've got a friend whose name is Karen. It's only the ruddy Count Duke Baron," said a Cockney German villager in perfect Cockney rhyming slang. "I'm sorry for your funereal loss, my friends," cawed the Count Duke Baron. "Would you mind if I were to utter evil words in Latin to myself out of remorse?" This was a necessary subterfuge. For the scheme to work, you see, there'd need to be a different incantation for each individual body part. But they bought it. Poor fools. They bought it. "If you were to fill up your neck, that'd be a neckful. I think that sounds very respectful," said the burgomaster, again in perfect Cockney rhyming slang, and the others nodded. As the funeral progressed, the Count Duke Baron laboured feverishly at his incantations, occasionally stopping to use weird, unnatural things he'd invented, such as a wardrobe stitched to an armchair to make a hideous, useless armed robe, or an experiment table stitched to a cow to make a cow bull, or a pen attached to pineapples and an apple to make a pineapple apple pen. An abomination indeed. It took such a long time that at one point he had to stop and feed his pet, which looked like a cat, but was actually a catacomb. And thus needed to be fed on a strict diet of first-century Roman religious dissidents. As he incanted, he glanced around at his many failed experiments strewn about. A steak he'd attempted to turn back into a cow. A conservative politician he'd attempted to imbue with a sense of empathy. Various goes at reanimating Donald Trump's dead, lifeless hair. none of it mattered anymore. Hands shaking with anticipation, actually bleeding with delight, the Count Duke Baron stalked around his creation, muttering ancient evil words. The first to move was the sexy bin liner, fluttering upon a spectral breeze. But after half an hour of incanting, that's not a thing, but after half an hour of incanting, the entire thing was moving, twisting, straining to be free. The beast had begun to wake. The villagers heard the sound, but it was too late. They turned just as the monster wrenched free of its shackles and strode towards them. "Flaming crikey," said the burgomaster. "Bleeding yikes," said the Jägermeister. The Count Duke Baron screamed with glee. "It worked!" he shrieked. "It's alive!" It was very odd, very strange. There were no cries of pain. There was no rending, no tearing, no growling. The beast wasn't eviscerating the peasants at all. No, it was playing Ludo with them. Ludo! Where did it even get Ludo? The 90s? And worse still, not only was it not killing them, it wasn't even being frightening. It wasn't blood-curdling. It was blood-cuddling. It very, very literally had a large quantity of blood in its arms and was giving it a nice, gentle, sensitive hug, which to the Count Duke Baron's eyes looked distressing, but which apparently the villagers found charming. It wasn't being hair-raising. It was being hair-risen. It was doing a funny impression of jolly old Hair Raisin, king of all the raisins, all wrinkly and succulent and wise. The villagers were supposed to be panic-stricken, but the closest they'd come was being picnic-stricken. From somewhere, the beast had got nice picnic food and was throwing it playfully about. He was supposed to be evil. How could he not be evil? The body parts had been chosen so carefully. Frantically, the Count Duke Baron tore through his book of incantations, and yes, there it was, the last incantation, the last and most important incantation, the one that would actually imbue the monster with a soul of purest evil. 2 of the pages had got stuck together for reasons the Count Duke Baron chose not to remember. He prized the pages apart. Oh, gosh, this one was evil. This stuff was dark even by his standards. He glanced up. The monster was now telling villagers the plot lines of horror movies, only he'd very slightly altered them to make them weirdly lovely horror movies, like Nice Mare on Elm Street, which seemed to be about a suburban street which inexplicably had a mayor despite being a street and not a town, and Let the Doc One In, which was about a nice fashion guru who wanted to help people rework their personal styles using items sourced solely from the high street, and Ringo, about a video cassette jollily haunted by Ringo Starr, singing nice songs about octopodes and submarines. It was too much. With a voice like a hate tornado screeching through a valley of bloodthirstiness, the Baron raised the incantations book and read out the final, darkest incantation. The lights went out. The Count Duke Baron was now very, very, very afraid. He felt butterflies in his stomach, though that may have been explained by his diet of cocoons. He'd probably have to make a run for it. But on top of the cocoons, he just had a dessert of buttered anvils. The Count Duke Baron felt around in the darkness, and at one point, he felt something which, well, it felt just like a disembodied leg. But no, it turned out it actually was a disembodied leg, so that was fine. His eyes adjusted to the gloom. Oddly, if anything, he could see better than before. Very curious. Still, there were the villagers, standing around him in terror, as was correct, as they should. There was Nikola Tesla, bouncing into a switchboard. There was the lifeless body of the Count Duke Baron Geflungenhausen. There was an interesting hippopotamus. Hold on, what? But he was the Count Duke Baron Geflungenhausen, wasn't he? He looked down at his hands. The ends were now very much candles, and he couldn't see the other one, but he knew it was there. The monster killed the Count Duke Baron! He wasn't nice after all, said the harbour master, so outraged that he'd forgotten to rhyme. A popular newsreader is George Allegaya. Let's destroy this lab and kill the monster with fire, said a villager, regaining his senses and his sensibility. No! The Count Duke Baron tried to speak, but all that came out was the piercing wail of a banshee, ironically foretelling his own death. Stop! Stop! Stop, you fools! It's me! It's me! It's me! The next day, the castle was a smouldering ruin. But if you looked, you'd see a strange book, weirdly untouched by the flames, sitting on top of the wreckage. What became of it? Who knows? But I very much doubt it's the last the world will see of it. I told you this book would be terrifying! Good heavens, everybody, Doom was an appropriate name, just like I uninspiredly said at the start. Good heavens! Oh, well, I'm going to need to calm down. I can't continue this ghost story night with fear like this palpitating around me inside. Oh, thank goodness, a calming book. Here we are. Oh, good. Phew, thank goodness for that. A useful and instructive history of onions. Ah, marvelous. Well, who doesn't love a history of onions? Not me, that's for sure. I bloody love onions and their history. Well, let's give this a quick read. Just a moment. Ah, this isn't a history of onions at all. It was a lie, a terrible, fearsome lie. This is another ghost story. And not just that, everyone. This seems to be a ghost story set in the Old West, where everyone knows there weren't even onions. This is a con and a con again. Those of you who remember the live version of this will no doubt be wondering where the book that is also a harmonica is. I couldn't find it. So, we've got this instead. Well, everyone, in we go. If you'd like some extra atmosphere during this, why not imagine a book that's also a harmonica? Who knows? All right, here we go. Good luck, everyone. I imagine this one will be rootin' tootin'. Blood. Blood! Blood on her hands! Blood on her face! blood everywhere. The tyrant was dead. Near to where that was happening, some cowboys were playing poker in the saloon of Screaming Bones, Colorado. Screaming Bones, Colorado, my friends. The spookiest ghost town in all the Old West. Trace the shape of a witch's hat between Tombstone, Arizona, Haunted Mausoleum, Wyoming, and Sentient Grandfather Clock, Arkansas. And Screaming Bones will appear exactly where the rusty buckle should be. North of the Superstition Mountains, west of the I Put a Spell on You Salt Flats, and bang smack in the middle of the Voodoo Child Desert. No one knew how Screaming Bones, Colorado got its name, but it was generally supposed to have been named after some bones that screamed. And ooh, it was a spooky spot. The surrounding desert was full of bloodthirsty Wendigos and haunted mines and secret 19th century alien landing sites and Civil War ghosts guarding hordes of cursed gold. It was peppered with weird mountains that looked like people going as well. Very unsettling. It was a hard place, peopled by hard dastards and desperate fluckers and evil cunts. Picture the scene. The doors, the sort of halfway to being a door, saloon doors, creak eerily. A light mist made of the thin smoke of dry cheroots and spooky desert dust, which is 5% sand, 5% grit, 10% true grit, 15% Wendigo dandruff, and 80% the desiccated bones of people who died pointing at a thing. Dangles in the air. Those roly-poly dust ball things skittle across the ground, occasionally stopping to form swarms and attack people like piranhas. A pianist in the corner plays Ghost Town by the Specials on repeat. Outside, old folks spit noxious brown substances at gaunt cowboys riding by coffin shops. That's the scene. And there in the corner were the players. They were a scary bunch too. There was Arkansas Judd, who, like Texas Pete from popular 90s cartoon series Super Ted, had a skeleton sidekick. Except, unlike Texas Pete, Arkansas Joe's sidekick was in no way alive and just sat there looking bony and unsettling. There was Gritty Joe, who always wore a beard that he'd won in a knife fight with someone else's face. There was Cyril the cowboy, who was so unlucky at cards that instead of a horse, he rode 2 dogs. There was Unseemly Cabe, who had guns instead of teeth. There was Esteban, the token Mexican. And there was handsome Truitt, the only one of the players who was also a player. Also playing was Honest Larry. Honest Larry wasn't good at poker, nor did he enjoy it. But alas, his family farm had been attacked by marauding triffid cacti. And this game was his last chance to make up the debt before old man Magoo at the bank foreclosed. They were playing a local sort of poker called 9-card screen. And Larry was doing well. Strangely well. He'd already accumulated a fair number of the small, rusty flying saucers with which they were keeping score. But hold your horses and get off your horses and tie your horses to the wall. What? A disturbance. The creaky saloon doors yawned open, apparently of their own volition. And a stranger rode in. He was wearing a vest made entirely of chicory, and a neckerchief made entirely of cacti. Chicory, by the way, though it sounds very old westerny, is actually a leaf vegetable of the daisy family, known for its distinctive cigar-shaped leaves, and which, interestingly, is cultivated in complete darkness, like the Conservative Party. His face was pale and glowing, and cruel and rather angular, though his eyes were invisible beneath the brim of his wide cowboy hat, which in turn was adorned with feathers, each of which had clearly been dipped in blood and used to write a thrash metal album. He whistled as he came, and when he whistled, it sounded less like whistling and more like the echoey screaming of 1,000 voices, none of which, very probably, were his own. Also, his horse was visibly dead. So very dead, in fact, that it was now less a horse and more some glue, and was indeed only recognizable as a horse because it had a saddle, and because it occasionally did a horrible gluey whinny, like the players started shuddering involuntarily, and the hair on Honest Larry's head stood up, because that's what happens when one meets ghosts. "Gentlemen, mind if I join you?" said the stranger. "No, go ahead," said Esteban the Mexican, in a voice which, again, I shall not insult us all by doing. "Very well," said the stranger. "In that case, I bet 100,000 golden nuggets. That isn't how poker works. But it was the Old West, so who gave a fuck? Gritty Joe was the first to speak. "I'll see ya," he said. And from his waistcoat he removed a magical pocket watch which turned you into a Republican. Cyril, the cowboy, removed a large Dutch ship from beneath his hat. Unseemly Cabe ran to a nearby restaurant, washed dishes for 70 years, and returned with the requisite steak. Esteban produced the deeds to a small mining town. Arkansas Judd looked very confident indeed, and offered his skeleton, which the stranger accepted with undue glee. Honest Larry was aghast. He couldn't possibly match this steak. But he couldn't quit. Not now. "Howdy good, aye?" said the stranger, his glowy face suddenly taking on a hungry, leering aspect. "Well, that's all right. I guess I'll accept the little old steak of your soul." Honest Larry started to sweat. It was too hot, and he was 5 scared. Maybe as much as 8 scared. But he had no choice. He'd have to do it. Larry took a moment and went outside to steel himself. But alas, it didn't work. He was so afraid that he chose the wrong metal and ended up just bronzing himself instead, coming away a fetching tan, entirely useless in a poker situation. Still, on went the game. And it became apparent very, very quickly that the stranger was very, very good at 9-card scream. For one thing, he was very organized, but not in the normal wholesome way. He was organized in that he had organs instead of eyes, which was incredibly distressing and very distracting indeed. Several of the players folded immediately. Gritty Joe, Estate Man, and Unseemly Cabe all quickly rendered their stakes unto the stranger. Cyril the cowboy was still in the game, but he was shit at poker and kept removing his clothes, despite being repeatedly told that that was not the point. The stranger laid down his hand. 5 aces, 2 kings, and a banshee, which, when its vocal cords aren't being used by Austrian Count Dukes, is a special 9-card scream card, which makes you win if an Irish aristocrat dies. As predicted, Cyril the cowboy had lost. In fact, he had not had any cards. It was Arkansas Judd's turn to lay down his hand. He did. 1 jack, 7 ones, and a xylophone. Arkansas Judd had been bluffing. The stranger smiled an evil smile. "I'll be taking that skeleton now," he said. Arkansas Judd reluctantly reached for the skeleton by his side, but the stranger called out, "No, not that one," he said, and he raised a cursed silver pistola decorated with 1 billion skulls. He pulled the trigger. Suddenly, there was a strange green light and a sucking noise as Arkansas Judd's bones began to a judder and a jitter. "No, no, no," gurgled Arkansas Judd as his bones were wrenched, still screaming, like the name of the town, which is very clever, into the stranger's pistola. "Call the sheriff!" shouted the barkeep, but alas, this town didn't have a sheriff, just a serif, which is the line or stroke at the end of a letter if it's in one of those nice handwritings. Honest Larry loved typography as much as the next cowboy, but once again this was useless in this situation. The players made for the swingy door, but the stranger raised his pistola once more. "Cheats!" he yelled. "Stop! Stop! Or I'll kill ya full dead." And let's take a moment, everyone, just to appreciate what a fine turn of phrase that is. Kill you full dead. It sounds a bit like fill you full of lead, which is the original phrase, but it's, if anything, more direct. Anyway, on with the story. "Gentlemen," said the stranger, regaining his spooky composure, "we are a-playing a game of a poker, and a player is yet to show his hand. Why don't y'all sit back too?" They did. Larry put his hand on the table, and then also his cards. 8 aces and a crumpet. A losing hand indeed. The stranger mounted his blob of glue. He raised his pistola. "What's it?" he said. "Can buy back in? Then I guess I'll be taking that soul." "Wait!" came a voice. "I'll stand you, Larry. Y'all can play with my soul." "Mine too," said a stayman. "Heck, and mine," said handsome Truett. "Ha! How many souls you got, stranger?" "Hundreds," said the stranger, giggling hideously and baring a set of razor-sharp green teeth. The stranger seemed to make a noise like a giant centipede rubbing its mandibles. But once again they looked up and there was actually a giant centipede there rubbing its mandibles, so that was fine. They drew more cards. The stranger looked calm. Larry was far from it. He was so tense you could have cut him with a knife. Not the stranger, though. Indeed, the stranger actually kept demonstrating how ethereal he was by passing knives through himself. Slowly, 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 they laid their cards on the table. The entire saloon looked on. The stranger had 3 9s. Larry had 2 8s. And a banshee. And at exactly that moment, somewhere in Ireland, the Earl of Fitzgalway decided to clean the inside of his family's loaded cannon with lit gunpowder. Larry had won! The stranger grabbed his gun, but it was too late. As Larry looked on, his hat began to smoke and rotate. His organ eyes lost their brassy luster. And upon his chicory vest appeared diamonds and clubs and hearts and spades. "What is this pokery chicory?" cried the stranger, which again, if you think about it, is perhaps the best pun there's ever been. It's like jiggery pokery, but it's pokery. Anyway, the players looked on as the stranger was sucked inside his own pistola. It was too horrible. At one point they had to look away, but the sounds were bad enough. A gurgling and a gargling, a crunching noise, as the stranger became reacquainted with his old gambling mates. Finally, the cowboys opened their eyes. Where the stranger and his horse had been There was just a rusted old pistola. Nothing remarkable about it, and unusable, as its mouth seemed to have been glued forever shut. Oh! Well, for once, the goodie actually won! What an unusual ghost story! Now, leveling with you, everyone, it is customary, it's that, to finish these things with the word again. Didn't do that there because that wasn't originally the last story in the show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say a sentence that contains the word again. Again! That'll do it. The stories for tonight are... Thank you very much for watching and listening, everybody. Thank you in particular to the Jam with Humans Orchestra. Hooray! Daniel, that's the best noise in the world. Marvelous. They're doing other shows throughout this quarantine. Everyone, watch them. They're ever so good. Enjoy. I say enjoy. Good luck with the rest of the quarantine, everyone. Hope you're all safe and well. And I mean, the weather's got nicer. Hopefully, you can enjoy that. Let's hope that the world is in a place where we can emerge from this soon. But in the meantime, don't, unless you're watching in the future when you're allowed to. Well, good night, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, stay okay, and see you next time. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Mr. Will Seaward, everybody. Wow, wasn't that amazing? I can still hear myself with my headphones. Wow, wasn't that amazingly spooky? I'm so sorry for destroying the imagery with my extremely lit studio here. I did not think about that before we started, and because I am directing this show, which is unusual, I did not have time to go behind and switch off the lights, so we have to deal with this. Anyway, once again we have Mr. Will Seaward over in his very special presentation. It was so much fun to improvise some music. We were indeed playing live music for those who joined in the middle and thought, oh, that was a very curious experimental soundtrack that Will was playing. It was not, and I can prove to you. I can play music, and then I can show you that we are playing music, and I can also present you. I can introduce you to the band. On this side, we have Cristiano Repeto on the guitar, very spooky indeed, and on this other side, we have Maris Ozols on the piano and the harpsichord as well. Brilliant. Thanks so much everybody for joining. Indeed, we Jam with Humans keep doing these shows. We are keeping weekly, sometimes twice a week. This week in particular, thrice a week. Tomorrow we are going to have a call-in show. We need questions for debate. For those of you who don't know, the call-in show is a show in which I will be sitting here, sipping on a gin, and taking in calls from very idiosyncratic characters calling in from all over the world. We need a debating question. So if you head over to Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and would like DM me for all that matters, we respond to that. That there's not that many people DMing us, and send us a important question. Last week's question was: is there life outside of Earth? Last week's question was: should I sit on the top deck or the bottom deck of the bus or the train? So those are the kind of questions we are looking forward to. We also have the Online Jump Society. No non-schedule for now, but if I were you, I would look up for not this weekend, but the weekend after. Maybe there will be something coming our way over there. Anyway, the best way to keep in touch with shows like this, perhaps even more Will Seaward's Ghost Stories, who knows? Just follow us everywhere. We are Jam with Humans everywhere. That's the best way to find out. There is a donations link. It's right over there. jamvarietyshow.com/online. If you are not there already, go over there, and we don't fault you if you don't donate. I hope you enjoyed. If you can donate, please consider doing so. Anyway, for all of you, enjoy. I was going to say enjoy as well. Enjoy as the best you can this time. All right, humans, let's play us out.